Hey, Dan here. Still on the train from Zagreb to Prague, heading home after a great week of writing, editing, and exploring the capital of Croatia, where I have a lot of family history, and I thought finally time to check it out. So I'm answering another question, which is how do you stay independent as an ENFP in a romantic relationship? Now, I hate to be the guy who always says, in my book, I talk about this, but there is a chapter in my book, The ENFP Calling, called, what is it called? The Lion in the Cage, the Eagle, the Lion in the Cage, but it's about ENFPs feeling caged in relationships. Now, this is a really interesting topic, and one of the things I would start with is it does matter whether you're a woman or a man in terms of this question, because ENFPs are a personality, which there are both men and women of, if that's news to you. Okay, interesting. But when you look at personality types, there is a masculine or feminine energy to them. Now, I'm not going to go on the whole long speech about masculine and feminine energy, but put shortly is we both have a masculine and feminine side. Men, women, we have both, and some men are much more feminine, some women are much more masculine. That's all totally okay. But it's really helpful in relationships and even in life to understand these. There's these opposing forces. I think it's Greek mythology, you have Dionysus and Apollo, right? Apollo is like the masculine energy about war and concrete and structure and like things must be, or probably it was stone back then, not concrete, but you know what I'm saying, right? Things must be solid and lasting. And Dionysus is like, just go with the flow. Hey, there's all these demons. Now there's sexy women and I made wine out of this dirt and we're having a party, right? Dionysus, if you didn't figure this out, is the ENFP and Apollo is like the ESTJ, okay? It should be fairly obvious, but there you are, right? So I am an ENFP with a beard, so I can pretend to be masculine, but a very feminine energy in that I love to create, I love to talk about people and relationships and psychology and all these sort of dynamics, which tends to be more of that feminine energy side rather than being most concerned with like construction and cars and facts and figures and whatever, right? So why does this matter? Well, it matters because generally, if you're an ENFP woman, and this question was sent to me from an ENFP woman, a good match for you is, according to sort of the traditional matching charts, you'd have INTJs or maybe INFJ men. Now, INTJs can be a very good match. They're compatible with us in many ways. I have many INTJ friends, but they are a much less affectionate, much more masculine energy. And they also like structure and being there. One of my good friends, INTJ, is like always there early. And he knows me. He knows at best I'm going to be on time, but he will always be early when we are meeting, when we are taking a trip, etc., right? So INTJs are very structured. And you can imagine that if you are an ENFP dating an INTJ, that you will start to feel pulled into their structure. You will start to feel like, I need to behave within this way, unless you have a really strong understanding of yourself and an acceptance of yourself, where you're like, listen, this is my energy. Like, I'm the whimsical one. I am going to be late sometimes. I am going to change plans. And that's just as okay as being the concrete on-time one. One of the struggles is that most societies, not all of them, are very structure-based, ESTJ-based, Apollo energy, right? Which means us whimsical folk, we feel more like we are the wrong ones, right? There are quite a few countries, like I'm thinking Latin America, where you are always late. That's normal, right? And those countries often do have more of an ESFP or ENFP energy. And it's like, yeah, of course you're going to be late. Why wouldn't you? That's not a big deal. But in like Canada, US, England, Germany, you be on time. And if you're the person who's not on time, you feel like you're the wrong one. And so if you have a relationship between two people, whether it's friends or romantic, and one is more of the really structured type, consistent, structured, etc., and the other one is more us, then we will feel like we're in the wrong. The problem is when we try and be consistent and structured to such an extreme, we lose the things that actually make us special. A friend said to me once, it's like you're caging the lion or the tiger, and you lose that whole part of yourself. So whatever makes you so attractive as an ENFP, being spontaneous and energetic and funny and creative, when you try and be that other person, you lose that part of yourself. Now, I'm sure I cover this much more articulately in the book, but what I generally think is, first, being aware of this before the relationship starts is really important, right? Because once we get into routines with people and ways of being, it can feel like we do get trapped. It can be really hard to change out of that. But the next thing is realizing that, and this applies to many ways with business partnerships, with jobs, with friendships. As an ENFP, you bring certain strengths. There's reasons people like you. I realize this when I hang out with groups when I'm quiet and I'm not really talking, or for whatever reason, I don't maybe know the people very well, so I'm not being totally loud Dan ENFP. A lot of people are really boring. And I realize one of the reasons people love me or want me to be around isn't like, because Dan's always on time or Dan takes out the garbage. It's like, yeah, you keep life interesting. We have a fun night when you're there, etc., right? So would people choose to have me be really boring and not talk and be on time? Or be a little late or a little rude or a little over the top, but we all have a fun night, right? I think they'd vote for my true self, my ENFP, to be fully out there, right? So in these relationships, you need to think about that and often have that conversation with people, or show them this video and say, listen, like this person you're falling in love with or have fallen in love with, they will die if you make me show up 5 minutes late to every meeting. And then you're just gonna have, instead of this like fun, spontaneous, energetic girl that you love, you're gonna have this like slightly on time but still late sometimes, kind of unhappy, kind of boring, kind of frustrated, half alive human being. Which one would you rather date? So I think that plays, that's kind of the best way I can say it. That's what plays a big part of it, is knowing yourself when you get into it, and also knowing that certain types do tend to be much more controlling. I'm going to film another video about compatibility and INTJs versus INFJs and a bit on that. So I'm going to film that today as well, so you can watch out for that one. But essentially, like some partners, especially the ones that have much more of that masculine Apollo energy, they're going to be appealing at times as an ENFP, especially if you meet under a time of stress. So let's say you have this time in your life where you're kind of disorganized, stressed, maybe a bit younger, and you're like, wow, this person has their stuff together. I can rely on them. Maybe they can help pay the rent, maybe whatever. And you're going to be drawn to them for that unconditional, stable support. But when you're at your best self, and you're more balanced and your life is together and you really want to be all out who you are, now you're stuck with someone who may be a little too controlling, a little too strict, a little too structured, etc., and it really doesn't work. All right, my name is Dan. I have written the book, The ENFP Calling, where there's like 50-ish pages on relationships. So, if you're an ENFP and you don't want to die alone and you like to have friends, well, what more could you do than pick up a copy of the ENFP Calling? Speaking of people, I'm also hosting an event in Mexico. If you go to ENFPEvents.com or click on the card that will pop up, you can find out about that. That's in February, but there's quite a limited amount of tickets. So if you do want to go, I would suggest moving ahead on that sooner than later. And I will see you in the next video soon.